everyone, good afternoon. Thanks for tuning into our third panel of the day, Digitizing Operations. We've talked about marketing, ordering, and now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of actual day-to-day operations and exploring the new ways restaurant brands can automate those duties. It's a segment of the industry that gets a lot of attention when a burger bot flips a perfect burger or a pizza bot puts out the perfect pie, but there's a lot of automation beyond robots too. Across the spectrum, there's a ton of demand from the industry. In a recent survey by Square, 91% of respondents said they would be investing in real-world automation this year, and not just software. Certainly, the pandemic has accelerated that push, but labor difficulties and overall efficiency had people looking at new tools even prior to COVID. So we're going to talk with some of those real-world solutions with some very savvy folks today. I'm joined first by Rob Carpenter of Valiant AI, who's developing an AI drive-through assistant named Holly. Rob, do you want to walk us through Valiant and what you're working on with Holly?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. So my name is Rob Carpenter. I'm the founder and CEO of Valiant AI, and we are developing a proprietary conversational AI platform to automate order taking. So if you think about the traditional experience of a customer driving up into the drive-through, you will likely have one employee who will be taking orders, processing payment, getting food together, filling up soft drinks. It's a very demanding and high turnover job. And so what we're looking to do is come in and automate the task of order taking. So now when a customer pulls up, they'll be able to carry on a conversation with our friendly AI that we've dubbed Holly. She never misses work. She's never bored. She never gets tired. Remembers to upsell appropriately. And what we're seeing is the ability to start bringing consistent customer service experiences to customers into the market and then rolled out across a wide swath of restaurant operators.
Yeah, I think it's so cool, and my wife loves it too. Her name's Holly, and she's very excited that there's a robotic Holly out there helping out. You know, I think a lot of people have experienced automated voice for better or worse. What makes conversational AI different than the chat operators that we've all had to deal with?
Yeah, that's actually a fantastic question. So the technologies that we're used to are extremely excruciating experiences. They're generally a process. Press 1 for this, press 2 for that, or say yes, or say no. They're clunky, and to be frank, they just don't often work that well. What we're seeing from companies like Valiant and others is we're truly bringing next generation technology to market where the system is able to have open-ended conversations, meet the customer where they are in terms of however the customer wants to order. The AI should ideally understand, be able to respond appropriately, and then be able to process that order. So gone are the days of having these clunky step-by-step experiences where you're trying to learn the system you're interacting with. Now it's really incumbent upon the system to learn and understand you and be able to have that open-ended conversation exactly like when you're talking to another human.
Yeah, that's huge, I think. And before we get into kind of the benefits there, how does it work? And remember, I'm not, or nor are our viewers, computer scientists. What is actually going on in the background?
Yeah, we have patented a piece of hardware that's roughly the size of your traditional base station headset system. So that hardware, the NX1, will be mounted inside your restaurant next to your base station, and it'll connect into that system. So that when a customer drives into the drive-through lane and the presence sensor, which is installed underneath the concrete, senses that a car is there, just like that traditionally notifies your employees to be able to greet a customer, now it notifies our system to greet a customer. And so then we'll fire off a greeting. We'll say, welcome to the restaurant. I'm your automated order taker. Please order when you're ready. And so then the customer can say, I want a cheeseburger. That audio flows from the microphone in the drive-through into the base station. The employees are able to hear what the customer said so they can keep making food. And then it flows into our AI computer. We translate the audio of what the customer said, and then we parse out the intent. So they said, can I have a cheeseburger with a Coca-Cola? Oh, and no lettuce. And then basically what we do is we create a ticket. We add that cheeseburger, we minus out the lettuce, and then we add a Coca-Cola. In that situation, now we have 2 of the 3 elements for a combo. So then the most responds from our AI computer back to the base station and then out to the speaker. So the customer is, would you like to make that a combo? Again, the employees are able to hear what the AI says as well. So they're able to follow the entire conversation that's occurring between the AI and the customer. So there's no operational effect to food preparation.
Mm-hmm.
Is done with their order. So let's say they say yes to the combo and that's it. Then we'll add the fries to the ticket and then we submit the order directly into the point of sale system. Currently, through our software, we're able to insert it in about 500 milliseconds so that we can give basically real-time communication and response back to the customer and say, okay, I've submitted your order. Your total is $8.06. Please pull up and pay at the window. And then the customer pulls forward. The AI sticks itself back into standby mode and it waits for the next customer to drive up.
You make it sound so simple.
Well, 4.5 years and a lot of late nights tells me it wasn't that simple, but
of course.
Down and where we're getting the technology to, it is definitely a lot simpler from the operator standpoint.
Wonderful. And yeah, how do you quantify the benefit there? Obviously, people are looking for better efficiency when they're looking at tools like this, on top of, making that either getting rid of that job or making that job a little better. How do you quantify the impact of, the benefit of the efficiency there?
Yeah, in the short term, what we're looking at is definitely a system that just makes the experience better for the employees, and then also has benefits to the end customer and the restaurant operator themselves. So we look at kind of two key metrics on the financial side of the equation here. The first one is average order size. And what we've seen from our time in market, and we were the first company to get one of these products into a live, real environment in 2019 with Good Times, is that we do see an increase in average ticket size in the 10 to 15% range on average. So you are making more money per order. And then secondarily, what we do is we look really hard at throughput times and how much quicker can we get customers through by being able to greet them automatically, freeing up labor, answering questions quickly to process them through and be able to take more cars overall. And then the third, and I think kind of the silent but probably ultimately biggest benefactor here, is being able to do task automation. So right now, a vast number of QSRs, the order taker isn't just taking orders, they're tending to do 3, 4, 5 other jobs beyond that. So by automating the task of order taking, which can take up 30 to 70% of their time, that employee now has a lot more time to process payments, to fill up soft drinks, help put food in a bag, check for accuracy. All of that work helps the overall efficiency and gets customers through even faster. So it makes the employee's job better, it gets customers through quicker, and we do see average lift in ticket size.
Yeah, and you raise a good point. And there's always this this sub conversation about automation of getting rid of jobs and replacing people. But in our conversations before, you said like no one really loves the drive-through job. Walk me through kind of the impact on labor that you see. You touched on it there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's definitely an important topic, and I think one that we all want to kind of be open about from a discussion standpoint. I think that job just in and of itself is extremely difficult. For most of the restaurant operators that we've talked to, that job does have 4 or 5 responsibilities on them, and that's an extremely stressful experience for 6 or 8 hours. Not to mention trying to control those employees to constantly be upselling customers. If you're hour 7 into your shift and you've been standing on your feet the whole time and you've had 3 people in a row tell you they don't want another cookie, you're just not going to be super motivated to ask that 4th person because you're just trying to push through and get to the end of your shift. And there's nothing wrong with that. But by being able to automate that task, we take that pressure off of that employee. And so then when they do have interactions with customers at the window, handing them their food, processing their payment, it tends to just be a lot more cordial and friendly and easy. And there's kind of no performance pressure necessarily in that situation. And so that's been a really big motivator for the restaurants that are testing this technology, is honestly just to make their employees' lives better. One of our biggest surprises when we went live in 2019 is that we thought there would be some pushback from the employees due to that exact issue. And far from that, this was a job they were more than happy to hand off. It's just not something the average restaurant employee enjoys doing. And then I think kind of a little bit more big picture here from the operator's standpoint, what they see often in the QSR industry is 150, 200, sometimes 300% turnover per year. And I think a lot of that is just due to kind of a high stress situation. And so the hope is and the focus is by taking some pressure off of staff, it makes their lives a lot better. And then maybe they're a little bit more likely to stick around and not turn over as quickly because they're able to have a more enjoyable work experience. So that's something that, we're still learning, still understanding. We're having those communications with employees, with operators, and then ultimately with the end customers as well, because we've seen situations where the order went perfectly fine and then they still complained to the staff, but all they were complaining about was that it was automating jobs. And we were really surprised to see that in a lot of those situations, it was actually the employees that were kind of sticking up for the system and saying, like, look, we can't find people and we have really high turnover. So this actually helps to make our lives better. So there's, I think, some altruism on the customer's part, but I would argue potentially slightly misplaced altruism.
Interesting. Yeah, that's those are really fascinating things to think about as we go into a more automated future here. But it sounds like Holly's Employee of the Month a lot of months there. Everyone loves Holly.
We're working hard to keep her there.
Great, great. I think the restaurant space is seeing a lot of these kind of new tools come out. Maybe they're going to be at sort of a scalability point in several years. What does it take for an operator to work on this kind of stuff now? What kind of mindset does it take? Because you're still learning a lot of things as you go, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is definitely a marathon, not a sprint. This is extremely hard technology. That's why it's taken us a number of years. That's why there's still a lot of companies working on it and a lot of companies that have tried and then ultimately left the market, deciding that it's just too hard of a problem to solve. I think the restaurant operators need to be a little more forward looking from a technology standpoint. I think generally it's an industry where you kind of see some later term technology adoption. There's restaurants that are in the high hundreds to low thousands of units that are still working on getting their first generation of a mobile app out. And this is 10, 12 years after the technology, really kind of became mainstream. And I think that COVID has really taught us that, it's not always a safe bet to be a late adopter on technology. And I think that this stance is more evident with McDonald's than with anybody, where I think historically, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, McDonald's was kind of a late adopter. They really would sit back, let a bunch of other chains kind of experiment, before they really dove in on anything. And what we saw with the dynamic yield and the Apprente acquisitions was really the opposite, where I think now McDonald's is saying, look, we're going to lead the field. And we're starting to see ourselves as, having a heavy technology component as a corporate entity. And I think that that's being mirrored, although maybe less blatantly, by other firms like Chick-fil-A and by Starbucks. And so I think the firms that are doing the best are the ones that are the most forward leaning and trying to find ways to make the technology work. So my, ask or my feedback is, instead of sitting back and waiting for the technology to be perfected, lean in, work with the technology companies, help them to perfect it, help them to shape it. And that will ultimately not only guide the product and ensure it gets to exactly what you need, it'll also accelerate and get you the product faster so that more locations, more franchisees can start benefiting in average ticket size, reducing wait times, and reducing staff turnover.
Yeah, I think those are great points there. And you see some of the best performing restaurant brands out there, Domino's or Panera, they were early adopters of this kind of stuff. How does being an early adopter and helping companies like yours or working alongside companies like yours build that institutional wisdom so that when everyone has this, you're still a little ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the technology adoption by firms like Panera heavily accelerated their growth. Chick-fil-A, Chipotle, Chipotle has really leaned into the mobile order ahead. They now have a fully deployed call ahead AI solution to automate all of those orders. And I think in that situation for Chipotle, now every one of their stores, they don't have to have employees jumping off the line to take calls. So that drastically increases the efficiency of their operations and the value per labor hour of their employees that are working there on site. Restaurants or chains like Starbucks, I think that their mobile order ahead is up to 40-45% of their business. So the groups that have really leaned into this technology have seen massive increases in operational efficiency. And for a long time, again, I think the theory was just kind of sit back and wait for this to come to us. And now we're seeing the chains that are doing the best. They're really leaning in. They're looking at the technology, and then they're working to make it do what it needs to do for their operations, and they're benefiting as a result.
Yeah, definitely. And if you can help guide the technology, it's going to be best suited for you, right? But yeah, thanks for going to a high altitude there with me a little bit. But let's get back to Holly some. What happens when there is an error or a very complicated order? Does that kick off to an employee, or are you working on a call center? How's that work out?
Yeah, we have a call center partner. So whenever the AI runs into an issue, we'll give it one chance to correct. So if, Holly has to say, I'm sorry, I didn't understand you. Could you please say that again? We'll let the customer, reiterate what it was that they wanted. And if we still can't respond to it appropriately, then at that point, the AI will kick the conversation off to a call center employee who's sitting by waiting to jump in. And then they just jump right on the phone. And so we'll usually have kind of just a nice friendly handover that's like, hey, sorry, the AI was having some issues. I see that you already have a spicy chicken sandwich in your order. What was that other item that you wanted? What we've seen from our experience is that, yes, there are times where bugs will crop up in the software and something the AI should have handled, it should have done. And that stuff we're constantly working on. But we also do see a large, set of those issues where the AI can't complete the order is because the customer was extremely hard to understand. They were carrying on a fluid conversation with another person. And then we've also seen issues where the customer just wants things we can't give them. So maybe we've switched from breakfast into lunch and the customer just really wants breakfast. And no matter how many times we tell them that, like, I'm sorry, I can't serve breakfast anymore, they're insistent. And so in those situations, you just have to hand off to another person. We had that exact experience one time, and the employee actually jumped on because on our NX1 hardware is just a big green red button. And so you can just hit the red button to take control of the conversation at any time. And so the employee jumped on and was like, as Holly said, we are no longer serving breakfast. And so it was really cool in that situation to see the employee kind of having the AI's back. And there's an interesting kind of element of sort of anthropomorphization here where the employees and the operators do really start to think about Holly as a coworker. She's doing a task, listening to her all day long. There is some cohesion there in that experience.
That's huge. And yeah, at some point there's going to be errors because people are people, and that's just going to happen, right? So where are you at with kind of I guess how close to 100% order taking efficiency are you? I mean, where are you at, and where do you hope to be in the near future here?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, that drive for 100% is always the North Star. I think AI has this element, though, where it's sort of like, two opposing magnets, and the harder you try to get them pushed together, the further and further, they push apart from each other. So,
yeah,
work increases exponentially from where we're at every time you try to lop off another couple of percentage points. And I don't necessarily know that error rate is the right term, but just in terms of being able to meet the customer exactly where they are to complete an order and not needing to pull in a call center employee. So we're extremely proud that right now we're in the kind of mid to high 80s in terms of order completion rates without any human involvement. And that's orders of magnitude further along than we were in 2019. So the system is really getting to that point where it can run completely on its own, and it can take the vast majority of orders, and only the hardest, most confusing orders need to be handed off to a human to complete it. But because we marry in that call center component, from the actual restaurant's perspective, it's still effectively 100% automation. Mm-hmm. It's just the employees on site will hear the robot's voice 80 to 90% of the time, and then a human's voice 10% of the time. So our goal would be to get up into the kind of high to mid 90s in the next 12 months, and just continue to sort of chip away at every one of those issues where we run into problems. And I think that's absolutely viable. And I think it's also important to remember that this isn't just, a challenge that we have or even the other AI companies in the QSR market has. I mean, Google has spent billions of dollars on their Google Home system, and it still doesn't understand my wife sometimes when she's asking it to. So, there is just a constant process of improvement. Anytime we see new and better tools hitting the market, we automatically incorporate those into our system on top of what we're doing to push and advance our own technology along. But in terms of where we are today, the technology is ready for the market. It is 100% order automation from the restaurant's perspective. And then it's currently just a blend of the AI and a call center employee.
Very cool. And you kind of touched on it there, but how should operators be rethinking their kind of labor model with technologies like this in mind? I think if I were a QSR operator and I saw this and I wouldn't need this position at all, I would be rethinking the whole P&L. How do you think people should think about that?
I think that's a great place to start. It does make sense to kind of look at the timing of, when you have people and the tasks they're doing. And I think at peak periods, lunch and dinner, a lot of restaurants probably do run people where they're predominantly just focused on order taking. And if that's the case, can you automate that position? And can you have somebody like a manager or somebody else swing in and pick up the little bit of extra work that might be left? And then in the other periods of the day where that order taker just literally is being pulled in 5 different directions, I think you can then look at, if we can automate, half the work on this person's plate, how else can we spread around tasks where maybe we can take work off of other people and backfill that order taker, that previously order taker position. So now they make the entire restaurant flow better and more efficient with all of that time. So I think you kind of look at it and say, sort of as a base case, we're going to make all of our operations more efficient with this technology. And with the best case, we actually might be able to save on some labor hours.
Wonderful. And I want to start wrapping up with a look to the future a little bit. When do you think this kind of technology or AI in general is going to be commonplace in the restaurant? I think it's still a novelty for a lot of people, but when do you think it's going to be really rolling out?
I would expect, at minimum from us, probably dozens of locations, 50 by the end of the year. I think next year is really when this technology should start to hit its stride. So then I think we start to look at potentially hundreds of locations. And then by the end of that year or into 2023, I would expect, thousands of locations for deployment is very realistic.
Wow, that's very exciting. Wonderful. And we have a couple of audience questions, and I think we touched on this in various ways. But how does your technology compare to others in the marketplace? I think it raises the question of, there's better headsets, there's better digital displays, and there's a lot of traditional stuff that's getting better as well. Why pursue something so novel when those tools are getting better as well? Walk me through that.
Yeah, I think our technology relative to other technology like headset systems is maybe a bit of an apple and an orange comparison. But for people that want to compare our AI system to other AI systems that are being tested in the market, I think it's a pretty easy test. Draft, say, 10 typical orders. And I would encourage, brands to consider stepping up the complexity, but not making all of them unrealistic. So sit down, listen to actual customer orders, transcribe 10 of those, and then sit down and compare the technologies side by side. We were working with one of the biggest burger chains in the country going through a competitive vetting process, and they found about 30 companies that marketed or promised voice AI for restaurants. Mm-hmm. It actually sat down with every single one of those 30 companies. There's only about 5 of us that had actually built a product. Voice AI is one of those things where it's really simple to use Google or Amazon to create kind of a rough prototype, but to actually have it be able to carry on a conversation with customers and complete an order is the hardest thing that I have ever done. We've seen companies that have raised exponentially more money than us that left the market because it's too hard. So for this burger chain, there was 30 companies that promised a capability. There was only 5 of us that had a real technology, and they did just that. They had 10 standard orders, and they sat down and they just did a side-by-side comparison between all 5 systems, and we came out with having the highest marks. And that was a year ago now. So from what we can see, the places where we can test other tech out there, they're in the 5 to 15% range in terms of being able to complete orders without any human support. And so I think the fact that we're now in the mid to high 80s speaks highly to the capabilities of our system. And if you're interested, I'd reach out to all of us, sit down, and then vet all of our technologies against each other. And I think that will make it abundantly clear whose system, is ready for your restaurant for testing.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks for walking me through that. I think a lot of operators out there see AI and they're like, that sounds cool, but it's kind of hard when you know how to run a restaurant to differentiate between various AI players. So thanks for walking me through that. And another viewer question out here, but there's a lot of different AI being deployed out there. You touched on the dynamic yield at McDonald's and others there. What do you think the power of AI is? I mean, from another high level there, how do you think this is going to change the restaurant space?
I think that in the next, maybe a little bit of a longer horizon, but 10 to 15 years, I would expect to see it start to fundamentally change the restaurant industry. AI is also just really, it's an umbrella term. You can think of it as just sophisticated or smart software, but it just really means software. And so it can be used in a variety of different ways. So we're talking about AI in the terms of conversational AI and automating the order taking. As you mentioned at the start of this discussion, there's also a lot of work being done on, food automation. So, robot cooks and, robotic pizza cooks and things like that. That's another area of AI. A third is then delivery, right? Self-driving cars is a huge area of AI research and development right now, rolling out and trying to solve these last mile problems, which in my mind is the critical solution to solve delivery. It's hard to find anybody that necessarily enjoys the delivery experience. I had a entree that I wanted to order to my office for lunch the other day, and the entree was $14.99. It was $30 by the time I got it in my hand with all the delivery fees. And I was unhappy with that experience. And you talk to restaurants and they're getting squeezed on their side and they're unhappy with it as well. And so I really view that, last mile order automation as being a kind of critical part of the overall picture of restaurant automation. And so I think that over the next 10 years, we're going to see all of these technologies come to maturation. We're going to start to see them used in conjunction together. And then I think we're going to really start to see extremely outsized profits based on being able to start automating a lot of these tasks.
Yeah, wonderful. And I think you plugging into that overall delivery chain from marketing to the handoff there is one little very fascinating piece at the restaurant level that brings overall efficiency to the whole process there. And one thing I wanted to ask you about is, you just raised some money, and there's others out there raising lots of money as well in the automation space. What is the investment appetite for in your world? It sounds like there's a lot of blank checks out there, but that might be.
I know. I really need to hurry up so I can catch on to this SPAC train here. That's pretty.
Get on that.
Yeah. That's what I tell myself every morning. I'm doing with myself. Yeah, it's open-ended. It's huge, massive, major, and minor VC fund, private equity, angel investor. They are all really, really interested in the space. So I think if you have a good addressable market, you have a good, clear plan in terms of how you're looking to solve this problem, and you have a good process in place for your company and your culture and how to use those funds appropriately. We are seeing a tremendous number of companies getting funded, raising huge amounts of capital in this space. And I think that that's warranted. There's obviously a lot of reasonable fears that we are in a bubble, but at least with the case of artificial intelligence, it's extremely hard. It's not something necessarily 2 kids in their dorm room are going to reinvent. Maybe as we kind of saw in the early 2000s with kind of the website boom. This just takes time and energy. It's computationally intensive, it's data intensive. So I think it's important to fully understand what the end result is that you're going for. And then if brands feel like the companies they're talking to can deliver on that, then lean in and work with them and help them, because that will really accelerate the creation and adoption of this technology and getting it to market faster. And the same goes for the startups that are looking to build their technology. Like, be realistic about what you can achieve. I would argue, at least in the beginning, try not to bite off, more than you can handle, and just really try to zero in and focus on a really good problem that you can solve. There's not a lot of people targeting it, and you think you can be the number one or number two company to solve that specific problem.
Wonderful. Yeah, I mean, hopefully some viewers out there are going to be calling you, and we'll help you scale up in the near future here. But thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us here. Any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciated the time. Thank you for all the great questions. And absolutely, if anybody is curious about this technology, please don't hesitate to reach out, even if it's just informative, looking to learn more. I'm happy to chat.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Rob, and good luck with the next testing and the scale. It sounds like you're going to have a very busy year.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks so much, Rob. We really appreciate your insight to the potential of automation and your very hard work on AI. We're going to switch gears a little bit to some literal gears, talking about hardware automation. I'm joined now by Shawn Lange. He's a seasoned automation leader with a deep background with stints at SpaceX, Tesla, and the president of L2F, which was recently acquired by Middleby. It's part of Middleby's push to go deeper into restaurant automation. Shawn, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little more about the company?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Nick. So Lab to Fab, we started in 2011, and just to slightly correct something,
Sure.
We didn't have stints at SpaceX or Tesla, but our company did plenty of work for both of them.
Sure. Sorry to confuse things there, but I think it's a cool heritage nonetheless.
No, it is, absolutely. And, the way we went from doing stuff for SpaceX and Tesla and others in Silicon Valley was pretty straightforward, actually. At our core, what we've always done is go into a manufacturing facility, look and identify what the dirty, dangerous, difficult, repetitive tasks are, and then figure out how to best automate those. And being that we're located in Silicon Valley, we've had every crazy different idea come in front of us. And one day we were, pretty much literally automating SpaceX, and the next we were standing inside of Zoom Pizza, during the first 30 days of their LLC formulation. And we helped get them to market in record time. Middleby took notice. We were doing some other stuff in food as well. And, really Middleby was looking, this is now when we engaged. We were acquired in October of 2017, and so we started engaging Middleby towards the end of 2016. So you're talking, almost 5 years ago now today, as far as when discussion started. And at that time, they were really looking at how do we start to bring more automation into the fold of what, the overall portfolio of restaurant equipment is. And having a company like Lab to Fab, where we're really automation experts that are great at integrating different technologies, and we're really good at looking at a manufacturing operation, which a kitchen is, and saying what is ripe for automation, what's not, and then once it's determined what is, then going after it and tackling it in a engineering manner, but also keeping in mind that it's all about humans, especially when it comes to food.
Fascinating. And I'm sure you have a whole lot of stuff that you can't talk about quite yet, but what are some of the projects you're most interested in right now, or what are you working on that you can share?
The biggest thing I'm excited about right now is Skyflow Pro, which we're just about to release. It's been in development for 2.5 years, which is 1 year after acquisition. It's really the first product that we have developed in-house. Pizza Bot's out there right now as well, getting testing. Very excited about that. But Skyflow Pro has just been a lot of work. We've taken what was a good product already on the market from a sister brand, Wonder Bar, and we've made it great. It's fantastic. So I'm really excited about that. And that's liquor control, mainly having a lot of success in stadiums, restaurants, bars, obviously. And then I'm also really excited in general, about what Middleby is doing overall. I report into James Poole, our Chief Technology Officer. And so we just have a lot of exciting things going on around Middleby. One of those that fits in really well with automation are pickup cabinets, touchless pickup cabinets from Carter Hoffman, where you literally just walk up to the pickup cabinet, scan in a barcode, a door opens, and you grab your food, right? And Carter Hoffman, for those that don't know, their background is in heating, warming. They do dry aging cabinets for meat. So it's really a nice fit there, tied in with other automation. And then what's hitting the press right now, actually, and I believe the awards are out as of this morning, but our sister brand TurboChef just won an automation award for a new piece of equipment called Plexer, which is a modular oven where it actually opens and closes, like you put food in and it'll display the food back to you when it's done cooking. So you don't have to go back and make sure you time when you open the oven and get the things out. It'll do that for you and present it for you for plating. And not only that, you can change out the different types of cooking technologies on the fly. So as menus adapt and those sort of things, people don't have to rip out a whole piece of equipment or change their layout or anything like that. So it's just really exciting being in a position now where, historically as a systems integrator, we get to use that skill set, but very focused within all the different technology that's at Middleby.
That's fascinating, and there's so much to cover there. I mean, you covered a Pizza Bot, smarter equipment, and then the consistency kind of things like Skyflow. I think is really interesting. It essentially measures every pour for you, right?
Correct. It does. It measures the pours, and not only it controls the pours. So if you look at a stadium, for example, we're just having amazing success. There are startups out there today that are trying to help people identify which line is the fastest at the stadium, because throughput is so key. Everyone wants to get back and watch the event. Most people do, with a drink in hand. And so what we've done by connecting Skyflow to the cloud, turning it into Skyflow Pro and analyzing the data, is we found out not only can we save our customers on the cost of goods sold by reducing the amount of overpours by 10 to 15%, just because humans, even the best of them, are not that accurate at pouring. Even when they're using a jigger, they're still making mistakes. But the data also showed us that we're faster by up to 40% in a stadium because you've taken out an entire step of the process. The human's still there, the bartender's still there, still gets to engage the customer, still gets to make sure that the customer has a good experience, but no longer has to, while they're trying to talk to the customer, trying to do the bills, also pour into a measuring device and then pour that into the cup. Now they just pour and go to the next. So, that's been really powerful small piece of automation.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. And some of the thanks for quantifying. It's kind of the efficiency gains there. How do you quantify your goal overall in automation? I mean, do you have a specific goal in mind, like saving 15%, or does that kind of come to light as you're working through things and testing it out?
That's a deep question in the sense that, from the most part, a lot of people will look at a task that they want to automate, and they'll say, how can we save on labor? How can we reduce the amount of labor that's required for the operation? And it's certainly a parameter that you have to look at, and it's certainly a very important parameter when you're talking about your return on investment. But really, the number one thing, the specific goal that we have in mind, is to make it easy to operate a restaurant or a bar. Make it easy. Make it easy on the people that are in there. So our number one thought isn't how do you get all the labor out? It's how do you help the labor that's there? because ultimately we're looking for gains across more than just one specific point, being labor. We're looking for quality gains. We're looking for customer experience gains. We're looking for throughput gains. And really to be able to, you can go in with a theory of what that ROI is going to be, and you can put some numbers to it, but ultimately you have to get something out in real life, testing, working with the people in the restaurant, getting feedback on, does this actually make their lives easier, right? Do the customers enjoy the experience better? Is it a better food product? So again, the number one driving goal for us is help make it easy to operate a restaurant or bar. Make it easy on the people in there.
Yeah, that's a easy to understand starting point, I think, for every operator out there. What does it take from the restaurant side or the restaurant company side to get involved in something like this? I mean, the Skyflow, for example, that's taken a couple of years, and I'm sure there's been some tests, and you have to have a partner that is thoughtful about the end game here. How do you suggest operators think about this kind of stuff when they're getting into it?
100%. You really need to work with a partner and operator who wants to try out new technology, that isn't afraid of new technology, and that understands that, in innovation, things are being developed that have never been done before. Typically, people are going faster than they're comfortable with. And there will be, bugs as you introduce something, right? And quirks and things that you missed in your product requirements doc. And so we're really blessed, within Middleby to have access to a very large base of customers and to really be able to select the ones that make sense to work with, and that understand, the process. And so, for example, with Skyflow, and I won't mention names, but, we're working with a really, really large chain, and with the beta testing, and they've already used the prior gen of the Skyflow. They're really excited, and we've done a ton of testing in house before it goes out to them, right? A ton. So, but they still have to be open to that, right? And those will be the first adopters, right? And the other people that aren't as comfortable with the new technology early on, they'll wait. They'll see the success out of people like the customers we're engaged with now. And then they will adopt after they've seen that, right? And that's a pretty standard product lifecycle curve.
Yeah, and I think everyone has to be cognizant in the space about that development cycle and that curve, because it can be messy. There can be bugs early on, but then years down the road, saving 15% across your restaurant before everyone else can be a transformative thing.
100%. And Nick, just to say that, Reid Hoffman, says, if you release, not everyone agrees with Reid, but if you release a product to market and it has no issues, you waited too long to release it to market.
Yeah.
And also, again, it's very key that the early adopters are the first people you're looking to work with, right? And those are people that want to try new technology. So
yeah, definitely. I think you're doing a lot of cool stuff out there, and but I think the restaurant space has been slow historically to adopt new technologies. I think there's been quite a acceleration the past year for various reasons, namely the pandemic. But are there some other lighter kind of automation things or some more accessible solutions out there that you're seeing really provide bang for the buck, or that operators can kind of dip their feet in and start getting some of the benefits of true hardware automation?
Yeah, well, I mean, true hardware automation, I guess maybe that's the sticky part there. But like again, the pickup cabinets from Carter Hoffman, in my opinion, that's true automation. That's stuff that's ready right now to go today. You've got the Plexor from TurboChef, which is true embedded automation. It's really a fantastic system that already a ton of clients are. I mean, we've already had a bunch of clients say, yes, we need that. We just put Pizza Bot out there, and I can't talk too much about everything that we're doing inside, but there is real automation as far as what people are thinking about coming, and I think we're gonna see it from more and more angles, and You can see in all the big chains and the restaurants that they're hiring people focused in this area, where in the past they really didn't have that. So we are, this year and the next couple of years, we're all going to start seeing more and more what we would consider pure automation out in the restaurants. But the low-hanging fruits are still centered around dispensing in general, whether that's dispensing of, organic liquid materials, organic, ingredients like tomatoes, lettuce, etc., or the ingredients, in pizza. There's a lot of people tackling that one right now as well. But we're so early in the stages that I think you're going to see a bunch of companies, and we are right now, that are going to put some stuff in the field, and all of them are going to have something good with them, and all of them are going to have something that needs to improve. And so this next few years is exciting because we're going to see a lot of iteration, I think, with respect to automation in food. And certainly, in the next 3 to 5 years, I'm looking at my calendar clock up there, but in 3 to 5 years, there's a lot more of it out there today than there is today.
Yeah, and that's going to be the timeline I'm kind of watching. Between here and 2030, I think there's going to be a lot of fascinating things happen, and the winners and the losers are going to be heavily sorted out. And speaking of all the restaurant brands hiring folks that are thinking ahead on stuff like this, and I've been blessed to talk with a whole lot of people that are very forward thinking on this kind of automation out there, and there seems to be more and more. How do you think operators should be thoughtful about the core business? I mean, some of these things are transformational. How can they build the, I guess, institutional wisdom to make room for true automation?
Well, there's a number of things that are going on that are converging right now. One is that, and I love seeing this, and you see that the chains are becoming hyper-focused on the quality of the food that they're outputting. All of a sudden, we have these chicken wars that, when you're talking about chicken sandwiches, they're outputting really good chicken sandwiches.
Yeah.
And you see certain brands, doing advertisements out there about having, no preservatives, and how their stuff molds and how natural and great that is, right? That's a major, major shift. And so automation is coming into a lot of this as well, but I think what's nice is, prior, when automation was purely just a play on people's thinking as far as labor, people are finally starting to see that, oh wait, there's other gains that I can get from automation. For example, I may not reduce my headcount in a kitchen by automating frying, but I will get more consistent frying. I won't get backups at the drive-through because of it, and the people that are in the restaurant can go focus on other stuff. And so for me, what I'm really excited about, and when I talk about, let's look at it from the, how are we making it easy to operate a kitchen or a restaurant, I still want to see people in there. And there's plenty of concepts that are going to be as close to fully automated as it can be, but you're still going to get, aside from certain segments, you're still, by and large, going to have people involved in food. And so I'm really excited about this kind of, what I see as a reinvention of the quick service restaurants, from a standpoint of a refocus on quality and customer experience, which kind of got lost, in my opinion, over the last couple of decades, and it became a cost thing first. So, I'm seeing that we're going to have skilled workers working inside of these restaurants that are able to keep equipment up and running, intelligent, automated equipment up and running. And you'll also have people in there that, because they're not trying to worry about these dirty, dangerous, repetitive tasks, that they will have more time to focus on the customer, and they will also make less mistakes because of the help of the automation, which will make them less frustrated and will make the customer less frustrated. So, and I think we're already seeing this. We're starting to see these QSR brands that are starting to churn out amazing experiences for their customers, and their employees too. So that's what I'm most excited about, and that's where I kind of see things going.
Interesting, yeah, and I think there is a lot of thought about labor, but there's so many of these things that are less less easy to quantify that are equally as important. I mean, if I have a bad experience somewhere, I'm not likely to go back, and it's very easy to quantify me never going to a restaurant again because their fries were bad, right? Of course, we're focused on delivery and off-premises operations here. How do you see these hardware automations affecting that segment of the business, or is it kind of making the whole thing a little more efficient?
It's going to make the whole thing more efficient for sure. And when you talk about delivery or off-premise, I mean, I think one of the biggest things where automation can help there is just expediting different types of orders, right? So if you have, DoorDash orders coming in from one channel, that all the DoorDash drivers or all the delivery drivers are driving through one lane, that's a different lane than the people that are ordering right there and getting their food there. So, and that's going to require automation as far as how do you get the food to the customer. Do you put pickup cabinets out there and you walk out and deliver it? Do you, and by the way, I'm talking with a bunch of different chains about this topic, and some of the chains are saying, hey, we don't want to automate the handoff of the food. We want the human interaction. So they're looking at, no, we're just going to hire more people to walk from the kitchen to where the cars are, but we're going to change how the cars line up. Whereas others are talking about, we'll change how the cars line up, but we're also going to, for the delivery drivers, they'll never interact with a human, right? And so I think this again goes back to your earlier comments or questions as far as the value. And again, historically, I think people would have said, well, what's the labor content that I could save on getting food to people in drive-through lanes? And I think a lot of brands today are thinking, what is the best experience I can give to my customer within kind of a price that makes sense, right? Obviously, they can't just open up the vaults for technology, but they're no longer just looking at it from a pure labor saving standpoint. And that's really exciting. That's where we've needed to be.
Yeah, I totally agree. And dialing out a little ways, your company obviously was acquired by one of the industry's largest, legacy players out there, and there's been a lot of investments in the space, just like Rob's got a lot of investment lately. How do you think the legacy players are rethinking this kind of segment or rethinking automation in general?
So, I mean, I can take that two different ways. I can take it one as the legacy players from the equipment side, or two, the legacy players from the kitchen side.
I'd say on the equipment side and kind of the investment side, it seems like there's more activity every day.
I mean, look at any of the large players out there, right? And they're all looking at how do you add in automation as part of the offerings. How do they have core competencies, as far as engineers and automation? And COVID's really accelerated it in this last year, and all the chains were already looking at it, right? I can say that definitively, right, that we've been talking, and looking at this stuff for years. It's just now all of a sudden, again, as opposed to the equation being just about a labor savings, the equation is much larger than that. It's much more holistic for most people, and that's accelerating it. So if there's a major equipment manufacturer out there today that's not doing something in automation, it would totally shock me. And so now then you have all the startups also doing it, right? And then I think there's a couple of exit possibilities for those startups, right? Certainly I engage with a lot of the startup CEOs out there, right? We Middleby, we're always interested in investing in or acquiring new technology. And then, some of these startups are going for the unicorn play and the complete disruption of the industry. And all of that feeds really well into competition and just ensuring that, again, at the end of the day, what we're going to see out of this movement right now is a better experience for the customers. I think we're going to see more stable jobs within the restaurant industry. We're going to see happier employees. So again, I'm pretty excited where we're at right now, and obviously very biased with respect to the role I hold. But
yeah, it sounds like a darn fun job. So to wrap up, and I think where this goes next is going to be really interesting, how this acceleration through COVID continues on. So to wrap up, I mean, what are we going to be talking about in a few years here? I mean, are there going to be different specific technologies that we're going to be thinking about, or different ways of looking at this space?
In a few years from now, and it's just now starting, but we're going to have pretty darn close to, I mean, I can't really say lights out manufacturing, right? But
not quite.
But you're gonna see restaurant concepts come to life that are based on a highly automated concept, and I think certainly what I'm curious to see is how does that get perceived by the customer, in a sense of what are they willing to pay for that food. Because we've already seen that with stuff like, for example, Etsy online, right? Where artists can get together and they can share their art and sell it around the world. The individual is becoming stronger and stronger as we move forward. And so there's room for both. They're both going to be out there. It's just to which degree are we going to see the highly / fully automated restaurant versus the more artisan style one. And some of the things that we're already seeing back from the people that we engage with is that once you fully automate a process, the perceived value of what you get is lower. People pay more for things that are handmade or partially handmade. And so it'll be very interesting to see in 3 to 5 years, the highly automated ones, what are they selling? What is the perceived quality? We could see a world in 5 years where people say, hey, I don't want humans touching my food because it's more sanitary if it's all robot, right? But again, food is an interesting one because it is such a human experience, it's food, that there's no way that humans are going to be pulled out of the equation completely across the industry. So that's what I'm excited about for the next 3 to 5 years, is just seeing the different types of restaurant concepts out there, some being highly automated, some still being, very much, the French Laundry,
Yeah.
So that's exciting.
Yeah, that divergence I think will continue to expand, and it'll be fascinating to watch for sure. Maybe a dark kitchen for lunch, no line, get it in and out real quick, and then go to French Laundry for dinner. Sounds great to me, actually.
I agree. I agree.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, Shawn. Thanks for being a part of this, and thanks to Rob as well. There's so much happening in automation right now, and we'll be, of course, talking soon and exploring this for years to come. But stay tuned for our next session. We're exploring the all-important handoff from restaurant to customer. Thanks.
Thank you, Nick.